You're listening to The Practical Wealth Show with Curtis May.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Practical Wealth Show. So this is I'm letting you in on a mentoring call with Coach Joe, with me. So that's what this is. I'm letting you listen in on. So let's talk about what we want to do is I want to talk about the business cycle theory. Not business cycle theory. It's a business cycle, not theory. That's in my mind, a fact. And of what happens to business owners. And if you're a family, you're a business. You know, I always tell our clients, you got to run your household like a business. But for this section, we're going to talk to business owners. And this is kind of a thought out of the book, A Case for IBC, how to succeed from the system, one business at a time, one household at a time, one family at a time. And that's what you got to do with all this craziness. So we're going to talk about that. And so this part of our talk is really aimed at business owners.
Right. Now, again, people become business owners when they decide that they want to do things like a business owner does them.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, you can meet some people who have a home-based business, and you can call that anything you want. It could be a multi-level marketing thing. It could be something where they just created a new product. They invented it themselves, and they're selling it out of their homes. They're building it. They're creating it. They're creating service. Or it could be where they just like to work from home and they prefer not to have office.
Right.
And I'm going to use Dan Sullivan, who is the founder and creator of the Strategic Coach. And when I was coaching under him in the late 90s, he shared with us that he didn't have an office. He had I think hundreds of people for him, and he has about 10,000 coaching customers under, that are paying him.
Mm-hmm.
He never had an office. Mm-hmm. He had his giant administrative office upstairs in this building, but downstairs on the first floor there was a Starbucks, and he operated out of the Starbucks for at least 10 years until eventually they forced him, for their own convenience, to have an executive office upstairs. So just because you don't have an office doesn't mean you're not a business owner. And one of the things that really occurs to me about what's going on right now in America on May 11th, 2020, with us, receiving the consequences of what's happened in our country medically, scientifically, naturally, because the virus is going where it's going, right? And also politically, and I'm gonna try to be as agnostic as I can, but it doesn't matter what your view is, you're being affected by what's going on in the world.
Yes.
Right? Or you're being affected by your reaction to what's going on in the world. Some people are saying, listen, you're taking my freedoms away, and I'm gonna go and congregate as much as I feel like congregating. That is your right. And that is a God-given right to do what you want in this country and to not be restricted in your movements. And again, your freedom ends where somebody else's begins. So we're not to interfere with another person's freedom of movement, but everybody should have the freedom to move. But in any case, with coronavirus, we're making a decision. Well, I'm going to stay home. All my kids are going to stay home. My parents are going to stay home. My wife's going to stay home. We're all going to stay home. Going to move our business home. I moved my business home. Okay. I'm sitting here with a very comfortable office with my big screen computer, and I'm conducting my meetings, 6 or 8 meetings a day from my home. Now, I have some friends who are realtors, who are doctors, who are lawyers, who are CPAs, who are going to the office every day. And it both works, right?
Right.
You're going to make it work because your intention is to make it work. The one thing that I think a lot of us have in common, I hope, is that we're not going to be victims.
Right.
No matter what the doctors tell us we have to do, and no matter what the government tells us we have to do, if I die trying, I am not going to be a victim. I'm going to be the decider and the master of my own destiny and my own future. And I'm going to create a path that I'm going to walk, and I'm going to succeed or fail. And guess what? If I fail, it's a learning experience, and I'll go and try something else until I succeed at that.
Yep.
But what's happening right now is we're in a certain environment. Okay. The environment is what it is. And this is a perfect example to me of the business cycle, because business cycles are not necessarily created or affected or influenced by things within our control. Sometimes they're influences that are outside our control. And coronavirus is a perfect example of it. Because, Curtis, you know that some people have businesses that are not ever going to reopen.
Yes, for sure.
And at the end of the day, why is it that they wouldn't be able to sustain themselves and get to the point where they could reopen? Because they didn't have a large enough cash cushion, and maybe they didn't have a plan to have enough cash or I should say liquidity in their different components of their asset basket. And the way you look at it, cash is king, and you're going to need cash to sustain yourself while your business is closed. But while it's closed, you got to pay a minimal light bill. You got to keep your insurance on that building. You got to pay your mortgage. You're probably still paying some employees because you don't want them to leave permanently and go someplace else. So there are things that we have to do as business owners to sustain ourselves so that we can get back to the point of being fully employed and fully productive and fully
And most
profitable.
people can't do that. I was talking to my sister. My family was in the tavern business, right? And so even if we were shut down, our refrigerators would still be running. Right. I would still have $1,100 a month electric bill. I would still have, renting an ice machine and all of those things. I might not have the payroll because we were closed, but I still had, cable bills and phone bills, and that stuff didn't stop.
Right.
And mortgage payments. And so that's, don't get me started, because I'm so annoyed that and most business owners I know couldn't go 2 weeks without revenue. They don't have the cash flow. I mean, they're done. They're not opening back up.
It's about cash flow, isn't it?
About cash flow.
Right. Cash flow is what keeps our businesses going. It's what keeps us putting commodity on the shelf so the customers will come in and buy it. They bring us new cash flow. We're able to pay our overhead, et cetera.
Yeah.
Again, what Curtis mentioned was that this idea, or at least this description of reality, which is the business cycle, came from Carlos Lara in chapter 1 of the Case for IBC, which is co-written by Carlos Lara, Bob Murphy, and Nelson Nash. And of course, it would be fantastic if there were no business cycle. If we could go to our shop or our store or our office and have the same amount of revenue 365 days a year, and never have to be affected by a thunderstorm or a fire or an earthquake or a coronavirus. But the truth is that we are going to have ebbs and flows. We're going to have peaks and valleys. And the idea is to have net profits, right? So,
right.
And the secret is net, right? The secret is not top line revenue. The secret is what we keep, not what we make.
Right.
And at the when we look at different businesses, we find that many businesses have peaks and valleys during the year. They have seasonal, and many businesses wind up doing a large majority of their business in the last quarter of the year. It might be because they have sales quotas to meet if they're a sales organization. It might be because they're a seasonal department store that sells winter clothing, that sells snow equipment, whatever the locale you're in, or that sells toys and presents and gifts for Christmas or holidays, right? So you're going to have seasonal peaks and valleys, but all during the 12 months of the year, we've got to pay our payroll. We've got to pay our rent, or we have to pay our overhead. And so what develops here is a need to stabilize and normalize our cash flow. We want to try to, like they've been talking about, flattening the curve, flattening the peak of coronavirus. Well, we like to flatten those peaks and fill in those valleys when it comes to our business revenue as well.
Right.
And so when we don't have the a sufficient amount of customers coming in during April, let's say. Well, we're going to resort to credit. Now, there's two sides to the credit. One is when we have customers who are buying from us, maybe for further retail, maybe we're a wholesaler and we're selling to retailers. Those retailers need to flatten out their curve as far as their revenue and their expense. So they will ask for credit from us, and we'll wind up extending credit. We'll give them 30 days is 0% finance charge. But if you're 60 days out, we might charge you 1% or whatever it is. So suppliers give credit, wholesalers give credit, manufacturers give credit. And retail stores like Macy's give credit. They use a Macy's credit card, right? One of the many reasons why Sears lasted as long as it did was not because their products were so great, but they probably were, but because they had a Sears credit card. So the credit allows us to smooth out those peaks and valleys. And what happens in managing our credit and our receivables, our overhead, is that we, as a business owner, will eventually go to a commercial bank to set up a line of credit. And hopefully it'll be an interest-only line of credit where we'll only pay the interest due on the outstanding line that we have. Now, one of the things that happens with that line of credit is we have to go back in and re-qualify for it virtually every single year. And it almost doesn't make any difference how successful your business is. Banks want current financials, current balance sheet, current P&L, current validation of your line of credit. Okay? So now, often when a business owner runs into trouble with their line of credit, the banker is here as the white knight. They're going to come back and say, hey, no problem. We're going to turn your line of credit into a note.
Right.
So we're going to be able to help you to stabilize your payment. But now what happens when
it's so funny because I'm hearing a lot of that now. You hear in the commercial, like, listen, just if you're going to be behind, come in and let's talk about it and let us know and we'll work something out with you. That's that. Okay.
Sure. And they're taking liens on assets, aren't they?
Yep.
And what occurs to me during this period of time when we have 27% unemployment in the state of Nevada, for example, 27%. I'm sure it's high all over the country, but it's super high here. And these are the seasons when people who are prepared get richer.
Yeah.
Right. This is how and why rich people get richer, because they have the cash flow to sustain themselves during downturns. And they're the ones who are actually supplying the credit to people. They're providing services to people that people will have to come back and be obligated to pay them an interest rate, right? The rich get richer, and this is the reason why. So when that bank comes in as the white knight, supposedly, to lend us a line of credit first, and then they will take it and turn it into a note, a systematized note, amortized for 5 years or 10 years, they're going to take a lien on our assets, on our merchandise, on our equipment. So at the end of the day, who has the control? The bank has the control.
Yeah.
And so now, if the business owner can't make those payments, which, by the way, they are personally guaranteeing, right? They're providing their personal guarantee and property and assets as collateral. When the business owner can't make those payments, or if the business owner can't make those payments, they're going to wind up going into bankruptcy, and the bank is going to be first creditor standing in line because the bank has first claim to those assets. So now the business owner closes up, goes bankrupt, walks away, and the bank now has assets that they can go and salvage out and sell. It doesn't matter if they get 30 cents in the dollar. They're getting something more than the business owner got. It's very unfortunate that we put ourselves in the position to have to obligate ourselves to an outside lender. Why? Because the lender has all the money, right? This is what Nelson talked about all the time. He says the Willie Sutton rule. Somebody asked Willie Sutton after he was arrested, they put him in jail. So Willie, why was it that you were robbing all these banks? And his answer was, because that's where the money is, right? And we look at banks and they say they're big and they're evil and they're corporate giants and they have all the advantage. Well, they got that way because they paid attention to the rules of money. This is kind of a negative picture. And so what we're suggesting is
this is business in America, right? So this is the typical business in America. So if you're seeing this is what people go through. And because of this interruption, this is being exacerbated as we speak. And so now what we teach is an alternative to that.
Sure.
That you can build while you're doing this, because you can't go cold turkey, but people don't understand there's another way.
So if we're listening to to Robert Kiyosaki and Curtis May and people who are paying attention to the way that money actually works, we're coming to the realization that you actually do have to keep more money in reserve than you might be comfortable with, because you're focusing on the rate of return that you're losing by having money in reserve, by having cash reserves or liquidity. But actually, there's a way in which you can build up a family bank, an alternate bank, we're calling it here. You can set up your own line of credit where you are in control. You become the saver, you become the banker, you become the borrower. And eventually, and we've got clients who have been in this system for over 10, 15 years, they've gotten to the point where they are moving away. Some of them completely moved away from working with banks. I mean, Nelson's idea was, you will never have to walk into a bank again if you could learn how to use your family, a strong, loving family, as the most powerful financial tool on the planet. Mm-hmm. Teach your kids and grandkids how to manage this banking system the way all the richest families in America have done it. And then you'll be able to get away from the traditional bank and go to an alternate bank. Now you see over on the left-hand side here, it shows here the FDIC reserve is $88 billion. The FDIC is one of my favorite whipping posts, because, people come to me and say, well, I have FDIC protection if I have money in the bank. Well, first of all, who keeps money in the bank?
Right.
I don't know anybody who keeps a ton of money in a bank. But FDIC protection goes up to $250,000 per account. So if you've got $500,000, put it in two different banks, you've got two different $250,000 protection lines.
Right.
But be as it may, FDIC is not the panacea that people think it is, because there's about $7 trillion in banks in the U.S. So what kind of a percentage in terms of coverage is that? We're talking about approximately 1%. So the Fed has about 1% worth of reserves for all the bank deposits that there are. So is that really insurance? Is that really protection? Now, first of all, I have a problem with the fact that these organizers and these founders of banks get away with making bad decisions and walking away from the problem when the Federal Reserve takes over a bank. You typically don't see bankers going to jail. You see banks taken over, and you see the customers protected to such an extent. But a while ago, President Obama signed a new law that's, we are not going to add more money to FDIC to bail banks out when they make bad decisions. All the more reason why we should take a look at FDIC and say, you know what? That's not really protecting me.
Right.
Protect organizers. And I'm really not here to disrespect people who start banks, right? The bankers have actually taught us a lot about money. That they're supposed to know about money because they're bankers. But actually, bankers have seen wisdom in putting their smart money their safe money into life insurance. Now, isn't that a kick in the head?
Yeah.
The banks are supposed to know everything about money, but when they want to put their money aside and keep it safe, they take it out of the banking system and they put it with a life insurance company because they know the life insurance companies don't fail. Life insurance companies don't marginalize or leverage their capital like banks do because banks get in trouble. Life insurance companies don't get in trouble because they're heavily regulated. They buy long-term bonds and they don't lose the money.
Right.
I mean, just a quick example, 2008, the big meltdown we had in 2008, 500 banks went under. No life insurance companies went under. And that should tell us something. So when all the Fortune 500 companies have a life insurance strategy as part of their overall financial planning, when all the richest families in the country and all the billionaires have a life insurance strategy as part of their wealth plan, we should take a look at it as individuals, as families, as small business owners, because gee, if it's working for all the rich people, wouldn't we want to do what rich people do? Right? That's what Kiyosaki said. That's what Warren Buffett said.
Yeah.
If poor people would do what rich people do, they wouldn't be poor anymore.
And so rich people look at poor people, listen, why don't you do what we do? And it's because it's, I've got, this is so funny. It's like pulling teeth for me to get people to read a book a month or 8 to 12 pages a day on stuff. Oh, I'm too busy. I'm too this and that, but you're binge watching the Ozarks. You know what I mean? During the virus, instead of really understanding how money works. That goes back to the behavior gap, And so if I follow you around, I'm so hard. If I followed you, I can tell people I don't make money. I'll say, let me follow you around for a day, and I will tell you why you don't make any damn money.
Let me ask you a question. Hypothetical question, and you're a hypothetical man in the street, Curtis. If I had a book that was proven, and if you read this book, you would know how to avoid and cure cancer. Would you be interested not in reading that book, but having your whole family read the book?
Yes.
So what we've been talking about here is we have the cure for financial cancer.
Yeah.
And then the cure for financial cancer isn't magic. It isn't some IPO or some get rich quick scheme. It's actually the real book of knowledge on how to manage your money so that you have control. And most of the schemes out there, most of the investment ideas, most of the things where people want to call you up and say, listen, you got to get in on this. It's the last minute. We're just picking up our last checks because this thing's going to close. What is happening there? We're trying to get rich because we're giving our money to somebody else because we think that they might have an idea. That's usually the first mistake.
Yeah.
On the road to poverty is giving control to somebody else. And a couple of things I was taught. One is the one person on the planet that I trust the most is me.
Right.
And number two, who is going to be more careful about watching my money, whether it's protecting it, accumulating it, growing it, passing it on, protecting it from creditors and predators and IRS and so forth. So why shouldn't I learn the principles of controlling money in my whole system if it only takes average intelligence? It does not take a rocket scientist to do this.
Right. It's funny because the industry teaches you, and they've, for the last, especially in the last 50, 70 years, you're not smart enough. You don't have the time, the temperament, or the training to personally manage your own investments. And so this is a talk I used to give when I was a registered rep. So what with me it was the mutual fund talk. We give you professional management, diversification, and liquidity. And because you don't have basically you're not smart enough, you don't have the time, the training, and in so many words, give your money to us.
Yes.
And so you're giving up control And but if you study wealthy people, they want control. When you start to really, I mean, I was a typical advisor, and I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I was like, all right, what he's talking about, and I was like a buy term investor difference guy, right? And it was like what he's talking about and what I'm teaching are not the same thing. And I remember they had the goal, oh, you got to read this book, but my upline was like, read this book, and I read it, but I really read it. And I was like, that's a mistake. Because when I get a book, I read the book, then I read Cash Flow Quadrants, and then I read the bibliography. And I was like, wait, this dog don't hunt, to in terms of the stuff. And that started me down this road of, I found Nelson book, and then I got into Austrian economics, and then started to, economics in one lesson, and Mystery of Capital, and people from Jekyll Island. I mean, the Confessions of an Economic Hitman. And so now I see this stuff, and I watch the news, and you can just see the play happening. Most people just don't really understand what's going on, and you can see it like clear as day. You just connect the dots of where's follow the money. Where's the money? Who's behind? Who's would be profit from having a vaccine out there? Who's pushing for that kind of stuff? You just got to learn to follow the money, and it's not even conspiracy. It's just follow the money. I mean, it's right there in front of you, but you're so distracted with bread and circuses. Not even these circuses right now because you can't get together. So
one of the things that Nelson told us was that as advisors, as IBC practitioners, we should only be going after 10% of the population. He said, go to teach 10%, convert the 10%. Get the 10% to buy in, and you share this information, this knowledge, this truth, this wisdom, and those who are hungry for knowledge and who earnestly want to seek the truth will take it in, will absorb it, will want to put it into practice in their own life. And for the longest time, I said, well, why wouldn't we want everybody to have this truth? See, the issue is, it's not that we want to hold this back from anybody, but only 10% of the people will get out of their easy chair. Right. So it's not that we want to restrict it to 10%. It's that the way people are, human nature tells us that most people would rather continue to work with the banks and let the banks do the work, because they don't want to complicate things. They don't want to have to read an extra book of the weekend. The weekend, after all, is for casual activities. It's for resting. It's for taking naps. It's for barbecuing.
Weekends are for Michelob. What's that commercial? Weekends are for Michelob.
But the truth is, I would love to get to the point where we're actually reaching 12%. Right. But the thing is, only a certain amount of people are going to want to take the time and the effort and the energy and develop their own motivation to bring this to their families. I mean, if you were to ask somebody, hey, if I had an idea that would not make you rich, but make your kids rich and your grandkids rich and your great grandkids rich, and they would never have to walk into a bank again, how many people would say, well, you know what? If it's not going to make me rich, I'm not so sure I'm interested. Okay, fine. And that's the way people are. I can't help that, right? Like you taught me, Curtis. I can't make somebody else thirsty. I love that. I love that. But it's totally true. And I believe in this so wholeheartedly. This is truth about money. This isn't my philosophy. I learned from Carlos Lara, who happens to be an economist. This is the business cycle. It's not the way I want it to be. And it's not the way one political party made it, or it wasn't forced to be that way by Wall Street. People who gain the upper hand here are the people who've been paying attention for a long time. Right. And they happen to be rich people. They weren't born rich necessarily, but they learned how to gain an edge. And they're the people that learned, hey, times are tough right now. People are having trouble right now. What can I do right now to create a foundation so that I will be a leader and people will come to me for good ideas. We had a young lady that solicited my daughter a month ago, and she was sending out, I don't know if she was on Facebook or what she was, but she was going out to do family photos for $20. And she said, now that the restriction is this: when I come to your house at 3:00 on Sunday afternoon, your family has to be ready and you have to be posed, or we'll help you pose in the front of your house. I'm not coming in your house. I'm not going in your backyard. In fact, she says, I'm going to have the door open in my truck. She says, $20. I'm taking 5 poses and I'll email them to you and you'll pay by my card online. You know what? She created herself an amazing business, and she took advantage of the fact that there's no social, there's a social distancing restriction on people getting close to one another. So she used her long camera lens, and she took this picture from probably 35 feet from us.
Right.
And she was out of the street in 5 minutes.
Yeah, I love that.
You know,
That's
an idea.
What is that an hour? $20 for 5 minutes. I mean, that's what America was built on, that ingenuity. And if you're listening to this and you're waiting for some type of check from somebody, you're a toast. You know what I mean? And so I don't even know a nice way to say that. I mean, and I think, and the 10% don't wait for that kind of stuff. You know, the other side of, I've been telling people, the other side of crisis, the Chinese symbol for crisis is on the other side of that is opportunity. And so you need to attack, if you're in business, you're seeing this, you need to be working on your marketing. You got to work what I call as an old basketball player, working on your game. I posted a video on how to, treat, Saturday, on how to treat your client base as a client retention as a profit center. The 4 mistakes business owners make. And I posted that on a video on LinkedIn the other day. And, it's that kind of stuff where you can get around this. And then when you look and you see the alternative bank, well, banking is just creating, you develop that where you start moving money into where you create a pool of capital that you control that can move at cost. So it could be to pay taxes. It gives you flexible term loans. You get dividends, but you can also invest in your business. If you see a business goes under, now you've got capital. So I used to study Sandy Weil and the whole Travelers Group, Citigroup people. And one of the things, the guy that was an insider said, listen, what Sandy does, he says, he was running Travelers Group, right? And they had a company that was worth like, I don't know, $500 billion. This is before they bought Citi Bank, right? Before they merged the two. And that whole organization of all those companies, the travelers, employees around the world was run by like 120 people. And Sandy knew how many people had a subscription to the Wall Street Journal on the company, and it wasn't many. Okay, like you weren't. He was on top of his cash, and then just like Buffett, every day what they did was, just like real estate investors always looking at properties, they're looking at deals. They're looking at deals, looking for companies to buy. One time they bought this brokerage firm to add to Smith Barney, and they got it prime offices in like Manhattan and 4,500 new brokers in for like $900,000. Basically the back leases of the, that the company was going out of business, they couldn't pay. So they picked it up basically because they had $1 million cash and they had it that day to do the deal. And they took Smith Barney from, I don't know, 5,000 brokers to like, 10,000 brokers and just merged them all together, great office space in a space of like 3 days, because they were cash rich. I mean, I learned this like 25 years ago and I was like 20 something. I kind of got it, and they used to say, listen, we were in a meeting, said, listen, should I be buying this? Should I be doing derivatives? Says, no, your best investment's in your business, in something you understand. If you're in sales, you could create I remember one time in my other business, I wanted to generate sales. So we bought an all-in-one printer and I ran a contest for my agents. That was a $500, $300, $350 investment. And then I said, okay, listen, you do this, 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 and this, and that generated like $5,000 in revenue for our business doing that content. That's a great idea. I just, just came back to me. But that's an investment in your business. And so anyway, guys, we can talk shop all day long about business, but I wanted to kind of get you to see this, to kind of look at what you're doing differently. There's only two ways to grow a business. One is to grow your revenue. So I'm gonna have another webinar about that. There's only three ways to grow revenue. And then this is more about operations and understanding what's out there. And then, one of the things that we offer is a way to become more efficient. So if you're hearing this and you say, well, all right, I'd like to figure out how I can make this happen in my life. That's what I do. Reach out, go to practicalwealthadvisors.com and schedule a strategy session. And let's talk about it. And if you email me, kurtmay@gmail.com, I'll send you kind of a report to get your mind around some of this stuff. Joe, any final thoughts for the family out there?
Again, I appreciate your doing this on behalf of your own clients and encouraging people to get knowledge about the basics of finance. This is not a high level issue. This is about how money works at the very core. And the people that pay attention to how money works are going to watch what's going on in this economy right now, in this dirt poor economy right now. There are going to be people who are paying attention and making money now, or setting the foundation so that they can make money as we're coming out of it. But it's easy to make money when the sun is shining. It's harder to make money. It takes more thinking to make money when the sky is dark with clouds and the thunderstorms are coming in and the rain is coming down. So we need to be able to, and that's why seasons affect the business cycle, right?
Yeah.
Because people react. What we want to do is not react, but be proactive, be the leader and not the follower of the activity. So
Absolutely.
I appreciate your having me on and having this conversation.
Yes, this was fun. So you will see more of these guys, because this is brilliant stuff. And go out there and make it a prosperous day.
Take care of yourself.
Thanks for listening to Practical Wealth. To access the show notes and resources, go to practicalwealthshow.com. To get your questions on the show, go to practicalwealthshow.com. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Practical Wealth. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.